It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice Now. Glad to have you on board with us this morning. I see a ton of you folks out there on the web. Very nice to see you. You're joining us in our third segment this morning. And we normally break the show into 4 different segments that we try to address whatever's happening currently in the news that day. And always we try to give you a different or a unique view or look at what's happening around us. We generally try to give you an opportunity to look at the news articles that the Ministry of Propaganda and the mainstream media feed to you every day, but we give you a different take on it. The goal is to have you exercise critical thinking skills to recognize when you're being manipulated, frankly, and that's all that this stuff is. You know, my son and I the other day were watching a program, a show on television, and I very, very rarely watch television. I use it as a news tool because I watch a lot of different news programs because I use them as fodder for this show, quite frankly, but I almost never watch regular television. Once in a great while, we'll watch a movie or something, and we were watching this show, and we have the ability to hit the pause button and put it on, pause for a moment. And I said to him after the first set of commercials, which I almost never watch because I never watch television except for news. And so, but right after that first set of commercials, the first one that came on, it struck me, it made me feel nauseous because it was so clear to me that I was being manipulated, that I was being fed a group of, a pack of lies, and that their attempts were so, it's once you know it, and once you notice it, and once you see it, you can never go back to looking at it in the same way again. It's like, it's like looking into the trees. And someone says, "Do you see that there?" And you're looking and you're looking and you can't see it. And they say, No. Up on top of that tree. Look right up there. You can see it. You're in the zoo and it's a monkey or something, right? And suddenly you see the monkey. And now you wonder, how could I have not seen it before? And then you look away and you go back and you look for it and instantaneously you find it. Because your eye now knows where to look. See, your brain works the same way, folks. When you understand and you see the manipulation for what it is, you'll never be fooled again. You have to train yourself, however, to find it, to see it. You ever look at one of those pictures where there's a picture within the picture? And if you stare at it long enough, suddenly it just comes jumping right out at you. And then all of a sudden you're like, wow, I've been staring at this thing for 5 minutes. And suddenly my left brain, right brain did some shift and boom, all of a sudden I see it. And now it's as plain as the nose on my face. I can't believe it took me that long to find it. And even if you put it down and pick it up a moment or two later, you can still find it every time. Your brain has to have a little bit of training, folks. And the best way to do that is to find the missing, think of the Where's Waldo game. Find him in every picture. There's propaganda in everything that you're told. That's not paranoia. That's truth and reality. Because the media, even if they're not propagandizing you for the benefit of government, they're propagandizing you for the benefit of profit or the sake of ratings. Irrespective, though, you're being manipulated. And you're being manipulated by everything you see and read and hear. If it's written, if it's on a television, if it's coming out of the radio, listen, even this show, to a certain extent, I bring to you stories over and over and over. I don't want you to take what I say verbatim, and I don't want you to adopt my opinion. I want you to formulate your own. If you ever call me up and say, hey, Mike, I agree with you 100%, I'm going to say, stop right there. You shouldn't agree with me 100%. You should do your own due diligence and your own homework and make sure that what you believe, you have good, legitimate, valuable reasons to believe. I know it takes time. I know most people don't have the time to sit down there and look through all of these articles and read all this information and study it. I get that. But to be honest with you, it's your future that's at stake. It's your future. Aren't you willing to invest that time in your future? Your wife, your husband's, your children's, your children's children's? The nation that gave you all that you have right now, that you are spending your time on instead of focusing on solving these problems and becoming aware of them? I can already see some of the email I'll get. What do you mean solving these problems? We can't solve anything. I beg to differ. I beg to differ. We can solve this, but we have to do it together, and we have to do it with our eyes wide open. And that means we put aside all the division, all the nonsense, all the ideology, all the rhetoric and the nonsense that you think you believe in and you've been told. Stop thinking that it matters. It's all just hype to get you to be divided. Because divided, we cannot win. Divided, we cannot win. This segment, we're going to cover the White House, who outs its own head of station for the CIA in Afghanistan. They blew this guy's cover by putting his name on a list. And the White House press office is unaware that allegedly that they circulated this guy's name. Now, some of the White House journalists who are in the pool, and one in specificity from the Washington Post, he caught it and he went back to them and he said, "Are you sure that you wanted to release this guy's name?" And they were like, "Yeah." Well, wait, maybe not. I mean, folks, you know what? I don't know whether it was on purpose or it was by mistake. I don't know whether it was ineptitude. I don't know whether it was done intentionally. I don't know whether it was hapless stupidity. But I do know one thing. Out of all the White Houses that we have lived through in our time, and all the White Houses before, this particular White House is the keystone kops of political history. Just absolutely disgusting and shameful behavior. You know, the ineptitude, even lefties now are coming out and saying this president is flat-footed, he's a bungler, he's disengaged, he's unconnected, he's not paying attention. You know why? Because he thinks he knows the end result. He thinks he knows. And maybe he does. Because if we don't wise up and shut this guy down and their agenda, maybe he will make it come to pass. I'll tell you why he's unengaged. I'll tell you why he is hapless and lackluster about the job. Because he knows that all these things that they allege they're trying to do, they're not. They know the end is here. They know that the end of our fiscal solvency, they know that the American people are no longer buying the lies. They see it too, you know. I mean, it's not just here. All over the world. I posted stuff up on our Facebook page this morning about how UKIP in the UK, which is the equivalent of their Tea Party, they kicked butt listen, the liberals in the English Parliament or the English MEPs, they lost every seat except for like one or two. I mean, we're not talking about a defeat. We're talking about a rout. And the Tea Party in England, they call it UKIP, UKIP. They're the ones who did it. Now, while they were able to do that over there, we, on the other hand, we on the other hand, basically, are going to reelect 90% of the traitors who have run this nation into the ground via corruption and bribery and treason. How do I know that? Well, the fact that Tea Party candidates can't get a leg up going around the country in different areas. I mean, we're seeing incumbents being... Why is it that everybody knows Congress sucks, but 90% of them are going to get reelected? If you can't figure out why the nation is such a mess, look at who the nation keeps voting back into orifice. Oops, did I say orifice? I meant office. The French National Front. Now, the media is calling them an ultra-right-wing, extremist right-wing. Well, you have to realize, in France, they've gone so far to the left that if you just call for some kind of government monitoring or you call for a balanced budget, you're an extreme right-winger. I mean, don't forget, Hollande is the guy who just passed a 75% tax on millionaires, okay? So take it with a grain of salt when they call them extreme right-wingers. Now, even the UKIP party, and I can't speak well enough about the French National Front to say what their political beliefs are. They have made some very anti-Semitic remarks and some things in the past, and I don't know where they stand today on it, and I don't even care. What I'm trying to do is draw a picture for you, and here's what it is. The world's sick and tired of tyranny. They're sick and tired of being run by a small little clique of oligarchs. And it's not just here. It's everywhere. It's not even limited just to the Western world. It's the Muslim countries. Look at Egypt. 30-some-odd million out of 80-some-odd million, almost half the nation, marched on that capital and threw the Muslim Brotherhood out, to the chagrin and disgust of our country. Huh? Yeah. See, we have, for all intents and purposes, become an Orwellian police state. In fact, there was a great article in Liberty Crier this morning by Lieutenant William Lawler. He's a 12-year military intelligence vet of the U.S. Army and the PA Army National Guard. He's a history, a criminal justice, and a mathematics professor. He's a professional business operations and education consultant. And he wrote this piece, and I'll read it to you briefly because I thought it was very good. The United States is, in fact, an Orwellian tyranny that merely chooses not to implement full tyrannical measures. It not only makes this decision because it does not yet have sufficient power to completely control the masses, i.e., we have not been made sufficiently docile, nor sufficiently dumbed down, fattened, sickened, or disarmed. When the government does have that power, and it will soon enough, it may well be too late to effectively resist. During a speech on May 23rd at the National Defense University at Fort McNair in Washington, D.C., in which Barack Obama was called to the carpet by Medea Benjamin, one of his employers, for his actions relating to men who are illegally imprisoned by the United States government in Gitmo, he stated, "Now, even after we take these steps, one issue will remain. Just how to deal with those Gitmo detainees who we know have participated in dangerous plots or attacks, but who cannot be prosecuted. For example, because the evidence against them has been compromised or is not admissible in a court of law. But once we commit to a process of closing Gitmo, says Obama, I am confident that this legacy problem can be resolved consistent with our commitment to the rule of law. End quote. Think about this. The man who claims to be the President of the United States has just admitted that he is refusing to order the immediate release of prisoners that the government admits it has no evidence against. Yet in the same breath, Obama states that the government, quote, knows, end quote, the men have committed crimes. How can the government know that somebody has committed a crime, yet simultaneously have no evidence against them? And worse yet, how can it continue to unlawfully imprison that person? How can Obama announce that these men are guilty when they have never been found guilty in a court of law? Barack Obama has just announced to the world that he has the authority to unilaterally declare that someone is or is not guilty of a crime. The executive branch of government has now officially partially assumed the proper and constitutionally delegated role of the judicial branch. Also notice the Orwellian doublespeak, as he claims that it is possible to deal with this issue consistent with the rule of law, while simultaneously violating the same rule of law. The two practices are mutually exclusive and completely incompatible, yet he states that they work together. This is a whole new level of newspeak and doublespeak. Non-evidence is actually evidence. Tainted evidence is reliable evidence. Illegal evidence is legal evidence. Violating the law is upholding the law, and usurping the Constitution is adhering to the rule of law. This is the definitive definition of newspeak and tyranny. Also, let us not gloss over the fact that Obama refers to this situation as a legacy problem, in a clear attempt to insulate or insinuate that he holds no responsibility for and is in no way accountable for this unlawful practice. Indeed, George W. Bush implemented this unconstitutional practice, but Obama continued it, despite his crystal clear campaign promises to the contrary. From the moment that Obama took office and failed to order the immediate civilian trial or the release of every prisoner, he not only proved himself to not be a man of his word, he also immediately assumed culpability and responsibility for the actions of his predecessor, and for every day thereafter that those human beings are denied their inalienable and God-given rights. In legal parlance, this is called conspiracy after the fact, and it is a criminal offense. I'm not going to take the time to read you this whole article. I want you to go out there and read it, though. Find it on americasvoicenow.org. You can find it on facebook.com, or you can find it on Patriot FB. And I posted it up. The title is simple. The United States is, in fact, an Orwellian tyranny. Obama's statements at the National Defense University. The reason I say these things, and the reason I think it's important that you understand that, is because, and he makes a good point. Now, personally, I'm not so sure I agree that these people have the inalienable right. If they fired on Americans, they've, to a certain extent, given up their right to freedom. But again, his point is, then you've got to have the proof of that. And if you don't, then you cannot stand there. See, this reminds me when Obama sat there in front of O'Reilly at the beginning of the Super Bowl, and he was interviewed there. And he said, there is not a smidgen of corruption at the IRS. And the IRS hadn't even been fully investigated. It still hasn't. So where did he come off saying that? How does he make a unilateral definitive statement like that and declare something to be legal or illegal or whatever when there's no empirical proof? He has no evidence to state something other than that. And if he's been shown evidence that says that the IRS is not guilty of unlawfully using its power and authority to injure and damage ideological enemies, then he has an obligation to show us that evidence, doesn't he? You see, I want you to recognize that there's a dichotomy between what these people say and what they do. You cannot have it both ways. You either follow and believe in the rule of law or you don't. It's that simple, but you can't have it both ways. The truth is that the United States government the Supreme Court, and frankly, they're guilty of judicial tyranny at this point. The administrative or the executive is guilty of it, as we well know, by going outside the boundaries of the office, number one, and two, the permitted limits of the office. And we know that Congress has betrayed us, oh my goodness, so many times and so far over the top that there's nothing left to even question, folks. You see, it's not that there's not a smidgen of corruption in the IRS. It's that there's not a smidgen of government where there isn't corruption. All right. Karzai, by the way, dissed Obama, and I can't even get into that because you know what? It's so obvious that the world looks at us, and I mean, Iran's Ayatollah, by the way, came out, and he said that jihad will continue until America is no more. Death to America. This is their holy leader, and I got to tell you, this is over the illicit nuclear program, and John Kerry should be removed as Secretary of State, and Barack Obama, for that matter, for insisting on this deal, which is now blowing back in our face by their own admission. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the eye doctor in San Antonio who's stepping up to do his part and do the right thing by vets in this country, and the 28, and I want to use that as an example of what each of us can do. And also the 28 vets who were discovered to be sitting in a morgue in L.A. County for 18 months. You see, this just goes to show you how systemic and cancerous and viral this disease is. It's not limited to one hospital or two hospitals or anything else. This is a nationwide problem, and there is no solution for it other than the complete and total and utter removal of all the people involved. Mutiny bounty. Pound mutiny bounty. Remember that phrase, folks. Pound mutiny bounty. That's the hashtag for the IRS bounty, where $1 million bounty is being paid to anyone who will come out and whistleblow on these scum. It's a crowd-funded source, so you can go to irsbounty.com. That's irsbounty.com, and you can make a donation there. I'm suggesting $5, and if 20 million American patriots did that, we'd have a $100 million pool, and we'd be able to effectively get 100 people with a $1 million bounty each to come forth and rat with relevant evidence that implicates treason in our own federal government. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to tackle this last issue, and we're going to talk to you about this awesome doctor in San Antonio who's just kicking butt. Kudos to this doctor. We'll be right back. You're listening to America's Voice Now.